Okay, back on the sink project. I worked on this for a little while yesterday, and then I had to go run some conduit for my neighbor and load a truck this morning. But I now got back to it, and I wanted to just make a little check-in video before I get the project really far along, and then it's hard to see. So I ended up remeasuring the location for this, and it turns out that I only needed to cut about 3 inches off here. So this is the part that I cut away. And this is actually a corner, so like the counter is kind of like an L, like that goes like that, which isn't really unique. There's a lot of L-shaped counters. I'm probably not going to be able to put these together really nicely, just because I don't have time to take a smaller TIG machine into the building and like weld them together once they're installed. I might do that one day, but I definitely don't have time right now. So this morning, what I'm planning on doing, I was hoping that I could utilize this piece here, which I still might, because it has this rolled edge, and get it installed there, and then I would have finished edge, because I'm a little worried about like water from sink operations going over here and then rolling off of the edge. So I wanted to put something there, but I also want to have the backsplash go along that side, kind of for a similar reason. So I'm not sure what to do there yet. This end of the table definitely needs something, because when I cut the end off, I took away the flange that bent down here, and it's just one little piece of steel. So I'm gonna have to do something, and if I'm gonna work on it, I would prefer to create the backsplash if possible. I'm putting the sink in. This is like a $10 sink from the Resource Recovery Center, and I just cut a hole, and I've been putting it in. The pieces of metal that were on the bottom from yesterday's video, I could probably show you them. So I was able to cut these off on equal. So like I ended up cutting like 1 5/8 off this side and 1 5/8 off that side. And I never messed with the spacing of these. And so essentially what ended up happening is the shelf just is kind of closer to the end of the table. And that's not bad at all. So that's kind of magical. I welded some new studs on here with the stud welder and bolted them back on. And then I sort of recycled that adhesive material that was in there and just stuck them back on it. So I ended up positioning the sink in the center because, you know, sometimes that's how you start projects. You just kind of put it in the middle. But this is a 30-inch deep counter, and so the middle didn't work. And it didn't work because the distance you'd have to reach the sink, like reaching towards the back of the counter, was too far. So I ended up with like quite a substantial amount of counter behind the sink. Maybe like you can put some stuff there or whatever. And I spent like 2 minutes thinking that I was going to use this like system of track to install the sink. And I realized that that was definitely not how I was going to do it. So I ended up starting to weld it in, like stitch it in with little welds here and there. I had to, in order to move it forward, I had to cut into this reinforcing hat channel, I guess. And I managed to avoid cutting this one at all, which is great. It's even still got its stud welded and bolted on there. So that side is totally great. This side, I ended up just cutting out a notch for the sink and then putting in a piece of 1/4x1 flat bar on there as a little tension member across the bottom. And that seems to be working pretty good. It's pretty stiff. I don't have any problems with it. So yeah, that's the bottom here. And on the top, so I've been experimenting with some welds on top. This was the first one I made. It's horrible lighting. It ended up being pretty good, actually, for the first pass. Or maybe that was the first one. I don't know which one it was. Or maybe this was the first one. I really can't remember. Starting and stopping is a little tricky. I have to speed up as I go because the heat gets in the material a little bit. So you can see like a lot of these welds end in a burn through on the sink. This sink is so thin. Somebody probably bought it at Home Depot for $50 when it was new. I don't actually think it's made of anything. It's so thin. But every once in a while, I guess it's not every once in a while, I guess almost every weld, I end up melting through the sink. And so that's a little frustrating. I can fill them in, it just, it's a little bit of a subroutine. So I'm sort of practicing. I don't weld a lot of stainless, but I think it's going fine. It's going to turn out well. I did make a silly mistake. As you can see in the corner here, I just made a rectangle and cut it out. And then all of a sudden I realized that the sink was radiused, and so that didn't work out great. It's not a big deal since I'm welding it in. This one right here, you can see I just put 2 little beads on it and it was fine. This one over here, I did the same thing. I actually wrapped the corner a little bit, and then I started to take the weld, finish the weld away, and I burnished out the heat-affected coloring with a Scotch-Brite pad on a Dremel, which looks like something like this with a little screw job. And so, yeah, little Scotch-Brite. If there's a bump, like some of the welds have a not optimized start and stop, I can use this little flap to take them down a little bit. Or like if I had to fill in this hole in the future, I may end up with a little bump there. And I can take this off with the flap. Anyway, so I'm going to sit down and probably weld out a bunch more of this, but I'm ultimately going to take the weld down to this this is really coarse. I don't want to use the word polish here, but I'm going to get it down to where it's not such a direct weld line. If I keep any weld, I'll try and keep the best looking one and let the other ones go to polish. And it looks like this is like a serious polish mark, but I've been using stainless steel countertops in a lot of places I've lived for a long time, and this perfect metalworking pattern of the stainless goes away pretty quickly and gets blended in with stuff like this. So it wouldn't necessarily be such a dramatic difference in the finish of the counter over its lifetime. This is very much has a grain pattern in it, and this does as well. But in the future, it'll become a lot more like the bottom of this sink here, where it's all scratched up. It doesn't take too many sliding a pan or a pot across here or utensils and stuff to create very high number of small little scratches. So, but that's the stainless steel countertop project. It was possible to buy counters that had sinks in them. It just wasn't possible to buy a 30-inch deep counter with a sink on the left. As far as I could tell on the internet. I make big air quotes. So I'm just going to make this one work for me. So here I go. Wish me luck. Thanks for watching.